Hello, welcome to Verbling. Hi there. I'm teacher Oakley, and in this class we're going to continue our little three-part series this week here at Verbling at this particular time slot. Looking at perfect tenses. Today we're going to move on to the past perfect tense, which has a pretty specific usage and rules. So we'll be looking at how the past perfect tense is formed, and then we'll be looking at those rules for usage, when and how we use it, and you, the students, will be practicing forming your own sentences, and I will critique your sentences with you to make sure you got it right. Okay, today, past perfect. Hello, Salvatore. How are you?
Hi, okay. I'm fine, thank you. How about you?
I'm okay. Salvatore, it must be very early in the morning there.
Yes, it is 4 a.m. in the morning, teacher.
Why are you awake? You crazy man.
Because I want to study English and I want to improve English, teacher.
Okay. Salvatore, before we get started, can I ask you about your new picture for your avatar for Google? What's going on? Italian Expo?
Of course. In May in Milan there will be Expo, and Milan has chosen the topic about the food in the world for the exhibition, teacher.
Oh, wonderful. Could it be better? Milan, Italy, talking about food. Could it be any better? Give me a ticket. Oh, wow.
The food, the new technology, how to make the food around the world, and there will be 20 million people that visit Milan in that
Wow.
period, teacher.
Awesome. That's great. That sounds great. I think we should go on a Verbling field trip. Let's all go to Milan.
Yes.
Sure, we can eat great food and learn some English. Come back. Come on back. I'm not ignoring you. Haven't gotten to
Teacher,
you yet. Yeah.
can I ask a question?
So, of course. Go ahead.
Did you see the Pope in Philippines?
No, I did not. I did not go to see the Pope. Frankly, a crowd of 6 million people scares me. If I can be honest with you, Salvatore, I find that a little bit scary. Yeah, I didn't really. I don't know. Ugh, I don't know. That kind of freaks me out. That's a lot of people.
Yes, I know. And I saw the news in the TV. A lot of people,
Yeah,
right?
I believe it's a world record. Uh, um, okay, let me welcome Xingyu to the class.
Hi,
Hello.
teacher.
Hi there. Before we get started, I'm sure some others will show up. Quick question, both you guys. Can you read this? Can you see the Verbling chat box? Is it
I
functioning?
can see.
You can
I can
see.
see.
I wrote, can you read this? Yes?
Can you read this?
Yeah, okay.
I can see that sentence.
Okay.
Teacher, I
All right.
have another question.
You do.
You have done the list of words exercise, but for most of lesson, you didn't finish that. I want to get the answer for those lessons.
Well, I can, okay. Sign up for a private lesson.
Oh.
Or you can research them yourself, of course. If you're asking me to go back and do all the vocabulary lessons I didn't finish and fill in all the blanks, that's going to take me like 10 hours. I will help you with some individual lessons. Again, you can always contact me through Verbling, but don't ask me to do them all at once, because that's not going to happen. If you have a particular questions, you can ask me through the Verbling message tool. That's fine, and that's okay. I will do them one at a time. That's not a problem at all. Or I'll answer questions one at a time for anybody, not just you, but anyone. No problem at all. I'm very good at answering my messages in Verbling, actually.
I see.
Okay.
I see.
Okay.
I see. You have to make more money.
Yeah. Well,
Building your knowledge. I
well,
understand your situation.
yeah.
You are a good teacher.
Well, I don't have much time.
You are too
It's not a
busy.
question of making money. It's a question of 24 hours in one day. That's the question. Okay. Past perfect. Let's get to our lesson here. What we're doing now, here and now. All right. Past perfect verb tense. How it is formed. We start with the auxiliary or helper verb, had, and the past participle form of the verb. So that's going to look something like these examples. You, subject noun, had, auxiliary, and the main verb in the past participle form. You had studied English before you moved to New York. Okay, we're going to talk about this usage and why we see it here with before in a little bit. Just basic form in a question. As always, we're going to take the first auxiliary. There's only one in the past perfect form. In other verb tenses, there are more than one auxiliary, but we always use the first auxiliary to start the question, followed by the subject noun, and then the rest of the verb construction. In this case, it's simply the past participle. Okay, had you studied English before you moved to New York? And finally, in the negative form, again, subject noun first, had it with not following the first auxiliary. First auxiliary is very important for the sentence construction rules for questions and negatives. You had not studied English before you moved to New York. In the negative, of course, I could conceivably say you'd not studied. I could contract you and had, but it is much more likely in spoken English to contract the not, the auxiliary with not. It's much more normal to say hadn't. Okay, in spoken English, it's much more normal to say you hadn't studied English. Okay, let's take a look at how this is used and start practicing. Hello, David. Welcome to the class.
Hello again, Oakley. Thank you.
Hello again. Okay, use number one, a completed action before something in the past. This is the most common usage. Okay, take a look at the diagram. I'll try to explain it. The past perfect expresses the idea that something occurred before another action in the past. So the blue or purple, I don't know, the purple circle represents the past perfect verb tense. The another action in the past is represented by the purple X. Okay, so the idea is the past perfect thing happened before. The purple X does not, it can be either another action in the past or it can be a specific time in the past. Okay, as long as it's expressed in the sentence. Notice the kind of orange oval or circle or whatever surrounding our past perfect circle. That's to show it's not necessarily necessary to show exactly when this past perfect verb action happened before the other action or specific time. We don't necessarily need to know exactly when that happened. Let's look at some examples to illustrate this. For example, I had never seen such a beautiful beach before I went to Kauai. Okay, it's a negative. He had never seen, or he had not seen, such a beautiful beach. That's the circle, the purple circle. Before he went to Kauai, he went to Kauai, that is the purple X. Okay. Notice the verb tense of the purple X or the other action in the past. It is going to be in simple past. I went. Now, in this case, this phrase is first, but that doesn't matter. I can say before I went to Kauai, comma, I had never seen such a beautiful beach. These are two clauses, one dependent, one independent. Makes no difference which one I put first in the sentence. Does not affect meaning at all. The only difference is if I use the subordinate clause, if I use before first, I would have to have a comma to separate the two clauses. Okay, another example. Doesn't always have to be before, although that makes it very obvious. But we don't have to use before to express the idea of one thing happening before the other. For example, I did not have any money, again, simple past, because I had lost my wallet. The idea being he didn't have any money at some point in the past, because before that point, he lost his wallet. Okay, lots of examples here. Tony knew Istanbul so well because he had visited the city several times. Okay, another one in question form. Had Susan ever studied Thai before she moved to Thailand? Okay, they're all pretty much the same idea here. Okay, we were not able to get a hotel room because we had not booked in advance. All right, one thing did not happen before the other, with a negative. Okay, in a dialogue, just when you're normally speaking in English, for example here, A says, had you ever visited the U.S. before your trip in 2006? This is a question, again, using a time, not necessarily an action, but a specific time in the past. Okay. B answers, yes, I had been to the U.S. once before. All right. Notice in the answer's already known. It's in context already. Notice it's not necessary when speaking to reference the specific time or the specific action. It's not necessary. It's known already. So we don't have to keep repeating it and repeating it. It's very normal to not repeat it, so as not to make your conversation boring and silly. Okay, it's the idea of one thing happening before another. Looking at these examples, perhaps using because, perhaps using before. Let's try to form our own sentences. Salvatore, can you go first, please?
Yes. One moment, please. Okay, I tried.
Okay.
I hadn't never eat granita Granita is ice cream. A kind of ice cream. I hadn't never eaten granita before I went to Sicily.
And I apologize for all the makers of granita. I don't know how to spell that.
I write for you, teacher.
Yeah.
Granita. Sorry.
Okay, I'm not seeing it. Where did you write it? Okay. No difference.
It's a
Okay.
kind of
Oh,
ice
I was
cream
close.
where there is
I was very.
a lot of ice. I don't know how to
Okay.
explain. Did you eat this kind of ice, teacher?
Well, I've had Italian ice in New York City before. I don't know if that's the same thing. Here in the Philippines, actually, they have a frozen concoction, which is very much like Italian ice, but it's wild. They put little candies and coconut and corn and beans and ube and all kinds of crazy stuff in it, and you mix it all up and eat it. And plus cream, heavy cream, coconut milk. It's actually really good. It's
Okay.
called Halo Halo. It's very good. Anyway, okay, I have something to say about this. You've basically got the idea of the past perfect verb tense. You're making it do what it's supposed to do. Okay, one thing had never happened before the other thing. Great. One thing, I may have misheard you, I don't know, but I thought that you had used the negative, hadn't, as in had not, never. You can't use not and never together because that's a double negative. So if you hadn't never eaten it, that means you'd eaten it a lot. Two negatives making a positive. So it would have to be I hadn't ever.
Okay.
I can say I had never, or I can say I had not ever. One or the other. Okay.
Okay.
But the idea, the past perfect here, is perfectly correct. Okay, Xingyu, you want to give it a try?
Hi, teacher.
Hello.
I had drunk a cup of tea before I joined the class.
Okay, I had drunk a cup of tea. Should I say drunk or drank?
Drunk.
Are you sure?
Drunk.
The past participle. Okay, I had drank, drunken. I had drunken. I had drunk a cup of tea. I believe. Oops, sorry, wrong button. Sorry about that. Now I have to check. Now I have to check. I believe there are alternate ways. Past tense: drank, drink, drank. Well, okay. What's the? All right. Well, what's the? Is it drink, drank, drunk? Okay. I guess you're right. All right. We'll go with that. I had drunk a cup of tea before I joined the class. Okay, you're right. I just had to check. Okay, very good. And that works as far as verb tense, sentence structure. Okay, very good. David, you want to give it a try?
Yeah, sure. Okay. I wasn't able to pass the mathematician exam because I had had not studied at all.
Uh,
Oh, sorry, because the last night I hadn't studied at all.
okay, and last night would make it more clear. It
Yes, more
would.
in the past.
More obvious. Yeah, more obvious. But it isn't actually, it isn't really absolutely necessary here.
It's not necessary.
It's not, because just the words themselves, I wasn't able to pass the math exam because I had not studied at all. Obvious, we know in context that the studying happens before the test. Everybody knows that, so it's quite obvious.
Okay, well,
So it's not
yes.
entirely necessary. It does make it more clear, and I don't want to discourage you from using time clauses, time words, and time phrases to help clarify meaning. And it's actually a very good habit to get into, frankly, but it's not absolutely necessary in this case.
Okay, I get it. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Okay, very good. Everyone's got that down. Let's go on to our next usage. Okay, now, really, this usage we just looked at, use number one, that's basically it. Variants. This is just a variant because we have non-continuous verbs in English. We can also use it to show duration before something in the past with non-continuous or mixed verbs. So we can use the past perfect to show that something started in the past and continued up until another action in the past. Okay, if this is for non-continuous verbs. Now, okay, for example, some verbs in English, let me try to explain non-continuous and mixed verbs. Some verbs in English cannot be used with an ing ending. It's just simply not possible. Now, it's not possible usually because the verb is stative or the meaning is stative. In other words, it's describing a state like love, hate, like an emotion, or possession like own, have, possess. I can't say I am possessing a car. I can't say that. I possess a car. I own a car. I can't say I'm owning a car. So some kind of state, the way things are. All right. These are called stative verbs, and they're non-continuous verbs. They can't be used to show a continuous action because they're not really an action. They're describing something the way it is. So mixed verbs include have, the verb to be. For example, with have, I'm having a party, meaning I'm holding or I'm hosting a party. I'm having a party Friday night. That's fine. I cannot say I'm having a new car. For that usage or that meaning of the word, it's stative as opposed to dynamic. A dynamic verb shows an actual action. Walk, run, jump. These are obviously actions. Okay, so if I have a regular action word, okay, we were running for 2 hours before we got tired. All right. We were running, all right, past continuous for 2 hours, and that would be the green line, and then the purple X before we got tired. We got simple past tense. So for actual real action words, we would not use past perfect. We would instead use a past continuous and a past simple. But because we have these verbs that it's impossible to use a continuous form, we'll do this. So, for example, we had, same example I was using, we had that car for 10 years before it broke down. And yes, had is the auxiliary and had is the main verb. So yes, this construction can and does exist. Had. Okay. Another example with the verb to be in a non-continuous form. By the time Alex finished his studies, he had been in London for over 8 years. In other words, I cannot say, by the time Alex finished his studies, he was being in London for over 8 years. That makes no sense at all. I just can't construct a sentence that way. So I have to default back to past perfect. Okay, and now owned, another example I gave. They felt bad about selling the house because they had owned it for more than 40 years. Okay, I'm going to have you guys make examples to help you with that. Here is another very important point. Okay, although this use we've just described is normally limited to non-continuous and non-continuous mixed verbs, we have exceptions in that we are allowed to, we can either choose to make them continuous or choose to make them a perfect tense, or in other cases we can choose to make them a past perfect or a present perfect instead of the continuous form. We have an option. These 4 exception words are live, work, teach, study. Even though these are not considered to be non-continuous verbs or stative verbs, you're allowed, they're exceptions. You're allowed to use these in this situation. So remember that if you want to create a sentence using live, work, teach, or study, that's perfectly okay. You have the option. You can use past perfect if you want. You can use past continuous if you want. Either way is perfectly acceptable in English. In either way, it really means the same thing. You're both describing something that took duration before an interrupting action. Okay, let's give this a try. A little bit more complicated. Salvatore. Using the examples, give it a whirl.
Yes. One moment, please. Uh, mm, uh, I try. Okay. I hadn't had a computer for 1 year because I didn't have a lot of money to buy it.
Okay. let's take a look at this. Okay, I hadn't had a computer for 1 year. Salvatore, 1 years?
Yeah. Yeah.
1 year.
Yeah. No S.
One,
Okay.
one is singular. So 2 years, 3 years, 17 years, but 1 year. Okay. So far, so good. Because I hadn't had a computer for 1 year because I didn't have a lot of money to buy it. Okay. Didn't have is simple past. Okay. All right. So instead of using I wasn't having a computer for 1 year, you can't do that. You can't use a continuous tense. You can't use have that way, so that's correct. I would also change one thing. Instead of having a lot of money, I didn't have a lot of money to buy it. I might change this. I might suggest that you use enough.
It's better. Okay.
It's better. It's clearer. The proper amount in order to buy it. So that's enough. Okay. Yeah. All right. Very good. That works for me. All right. Whoops. Get rid of A here. And there we go. Okay. That's great. Good job. Zinga, you want to give it a try?
I had stayed in China.
Is it have or had?
I had
Had.
I had stayed in China. I had stayed in China for 5 years before I moved to America.
Okay. Now, wait a minute. Okay. All right, so you're talking about duration for 5 years here. Why can't you say I was staying?
I was staying. Which
Yeah.
one you right?
This is right, because you can use stay in a continuous form. This is okay. So unless it's non-continuous or a mixed verb or one of these 4 exception words, all right, then you would normally use, to show duration, you would normally use a continuous tense. I was staying in China for 5 years before I moved to America. Now,
Teacher,
of course,
I'm changing my sentence.
yes, you can have another verb here.
I had been.
Yeah, now that would make sense. Yes, you would have to do it this way. There's no other alternative. Yes, I had been in China for 5 years before I moved to America. Yes, you cannot say I was being in China. That's right. Okay. There you go. That's the idea right there. Okay, David, you want to give it a try?
Yes, okay. Okay. Maybe I had lived in my parents' house for 10 years. Because I wasn't able to be an independent person.
Okay. I had lived in my parents' house. Very good. I was hoping someone would use one of these exception words. Thank you. I had lived in my parents' house for 10 years. Great. Because clearly, duration, because I wasn't able to be an independent person. Okay. Simple past. Okay. That's perfect. Of course, again, I reiterate, with these exception words, live, work, teach, study, you have the option. He could equally correctly write, I was living in my parents' house for 10 years.
Okay.
Either way. Okay. Very good.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, now here is another important note regarding specific times with the past perfect. Unlike with the present perfect, and this is very important because they're different. Present perfect, you cannot use specific times with present perfect. Unlike with the present perfect, it is possible to use specific time words or phrases with the past perfect. Although this is possible, it is usually not necessary due to the fact, as I was talking to David about earlier, with adding the time phrase. Often it's not necessary because of we use like before and because, and it is quite often completely obvious. But let's take a look at an example. It's possible to do this. It's grammatically correct. She had visited her Japanese relatives once in 1993. Before she moved in with them in 1996. Again, I don't have to. I can simply say, get rid of that. She had visited her Japanese relatives before she moved in with them. I can get rid of these time phrases here. I don't really need them. It's not necessary because we use the word before. It's quite obvious that one thing happened before the other one. So it's not entirely necessary. Moreover, all right, here's the technicality. Well, here's something to not get into arguments with English teachers about. If the past perfect action did occur at a specific time, the simple past can be used instead of the past perfect. When before or after is used in a sentence because it before and after the words themselves make it perfectly obvious the sequence or the order in which things happen. Okay, so past perfect is actually optional. For that reason, both of these sentences would be correct. She had visited, past perfect, Japanese relatives once in 93 before she moved in with them in 96. Okay, or she visited her Japanese relatives once in 93 before she moved in with them in 96. This is perfectly okay because we have before here and it's quite obvious which goes where. However, dun dun dun, uh-oh. However, if the past perfect is not referring to an action at a specific time, past perfect is not optional. Okay, we're going to look at some examples. All right. Not correct. She never saw a bear before she moved to Alaska. I can't do that. All right. I would have to use past perfect. She had never seen a bear before she moved to Alaska. Okay. Past perfect is not optional. Here, past perfect is referring to a lack of experience rather than an action at a specific time. We cannot use simple past in this case. We're not talking about a specific time. Okay. Another way to look at this in a different way to look at it, but it's saying the same exact thing. When you use specific times, you always have the option to use simple past. And that's true regardless of the verb tense. You can always use simple past if specific times are indicated. If they're not, then that may not be an option. All right, not just when it comes to past perfect, but even other tenses. Because a specific time in the past indicates the action's done, and that's what we use simple past for this purple X, to indicate that this is absolutely done. Okay. Even it doesn't matter. Even if I put a specific date here, she never saw a bear before she moved to Alaska in 1993. I can't. She moved to Alaska in 1993. There's no time clause that deals with seeing a bear. Unlike here, she had visited her once in 1993. Now, this clause refers to visiting her Japanese relatives. So hopefully you get those ideas and exceptions. Okay. Any questions about that? That was a lot of information I just laid on you guys. You get this whole idea of specific times with the past perfect. Do you have any questions about this?
We need to memorize these rules.
Well, yes and no. I try to give you a simpler way to think about it. If you have a specific time, then you can use simple past. If you don't have a specific time in the clause, and I'm talking about in the clause, not the whole sentence, then you don't have that option. And that's basically it. Okay, let's talk about adverb placement for just a minute. Okay, adverbs such as always, only, never, ever, still, just, and others, if they're obviously there to modify the verb and not other things, if they're not there to modify another adverb or an adjective, they're obviously there to modify the verb. The proper placement is here in front of the verb. Okay. Right in front of the verb. Always in front of the verb. And this is true not just past perfect, but really for any verb tense at all. You put these, especially these adverbs like this, to show frequency. How often does this action happen? Always, only, never, ever. Still, it's still happening. Just shows frequency, or when it happened. When did it happen previously? Still, just. Okay. Or how often it happened. All right. These adverbs go in front of the verb. There are different ways you can form sentences. For example, I can say previously, comma, that separates it from the clause. Previously, comma, you had studied English. Well, actually, that doesn't even make sense. Previously, you had studied English before you moved to New York. Yeah, that's still weird. Well, without the second clause, I can move previously around. Get rid of before you moved to New York, and I can move it around. You had studied English previously. Previously, you had studied English. Okay, there may be options. The problem is, with different meanings of words and different adverbs, you could run into problems. The reason I'm showing you this is to stress the fact that this is always correct. This placement can never be wrong, and it will obviously be modifying, talking about the verb. When did you study? Earlier or previously. Okay, that's the idea. There are times you can move these adverbs around, but this will always be correct. So you don't have to worry about it if you're writing something important, a business document or examination paper or something of that nature. Okie doke. Well, last but not least, we're going to try this out. Let's talk about active and passive with the past perfect. All right, and our regular active sentence, such as we have been looking at for the last 47 minutes. George had repaired many cars. Okay, super. Second clause, before he received his mechanic's license. All right, in an active sentence, the subject noun does the action to or at something else. Many cars. The action happens to the object noun, many cars. In a passive sentence, the reason we use passive is because we don't care who does the action. We don't care, perhaps because it's obvious. I had been given a ticket for speeding. Well, I can use a passive there because you know who gives people tickets for speeding. It's the police. Obviously, a policeman gave me a ticket. There's no need for me to express who did the action. A ticket was received for speeding. It's obvious who did the action. So I don't need to say. Or in instructions, for example, in an instruction manual, when you write an instruction manual, you don't know who's going to be following the instructions, so instruction manuals are always in passive form. Okay, in the passive form, the subject noun is now many cars. The action happens to the subject noun. Many cars had been repaired. If I want to add this information, I can by using a prepositional phrase with by. It's not always necessary. It's going to be necessary in this particular sentence because the latter half of the sentence talks about George. So it wouldn't make any sense in this particular sentence to not include it. However, including it in many passive sentences is optional. It's not absolutely necessary. Okay. So the actual form, we still use had, just like in the active form. Okay. And then been, we actually use the past participle of the verb to be. And then repaired. Okay, let's see. Let me think a second. Okay. I'm trying to think. Okay. The river had been swam. The river had been swum. This is still the past participle. Okay. Swim, swam, swum. The river had been swum by many people. The English Channel has been swum by many people. That's a present perfect passive form. I'm just trying to think if this main verb is in past participle. It is. Okay, so both the verb to be and the main verb, past participle. Okay, let's try this out. A little more challenging, but just follow this example. Okay, had been, whatever. Salvatore, you want to try forming a passive with past perfect?
Okay, passive form. Okay, let me think. 1 second.
Sure.
Many dishes had been cooked by myself before I started To work in the restaurant.
Okay, okay, all right. Many dishes had been cooked. Okay. By myself. Okay. I think you don't need the reflective pronoun here. I do believe you can say by me.
By me. Okay.
Before I stated, whoops, that's my fault. Before I started to work in the restaurant. Okay. Okay. I think that's pretty good. All right, good job. Be careful of pronunciation, Salvatore, of cooked. Cooked.
Cooked.
Yep.
Cooked.
One syllable. Don't add an extra syllable for the past tense for the ed ending. Okay.
T sound, right?
The T sound. You got it.
Cooked. Okay.
Zinio, you want to give this a try?
My computer had been fixed many times before I bought a new one.
Yeah. That's a okay. And very good. My computer had been fixed many times before I bought a new one. I can relate to this sentence. Yeah.
Teacher, you should
Yeah.
buy a new computer.
Yeah, I know. Wait till I pay all my bills from Christmas, Zingu. Then the first Christmas comes and I spend all my money on my family, and then as soon as I can pay all my bills and start saving money again, then I can buy myself a Christmas present. So I get my Christmas present around March. Yeah. Okay. All right, that's perfect. I have no problems with that. A very useful and practical use of the passive form with past perfect. This makes sense, and it's very a practical thing to say, a practical idea. Very good. David, you want to give it a try?
Yes, sure, okay. My example is I had to study really hard in the college before I get my bachelor degree.
Before what?
Before I got my
Got
bachelor degree. It was a little mistake.
I was. That's why I was asking. Okay. 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 I had to study really hard in the college. Now, okay. Using the here, the specific article. Depends on context. If we know exactly what college, because of course there are many colleges,
Yes.
if we know exactly what one because of context, then you would use the. But if you don't know which college it is, it's non-specific, we can just use college here without an article. I don't have to say in a college, even though, okay, now this is a little tricky. Colleges are countable. I went to 3 colleges before I finally got my degree. That's definitely possible. However, we don't need an article a or the, because we're talking about it in general, and actually we're talking about college more as a concept. The concept of going to secondary education, in which case it is actually uncountable. So you don't need, because you're talking about as a concept, not an individual university or school, you don't need the. So there you go. I had to study really hard in college before I got my bachelor's degree, and yes, simple past with gut. Okay. Is this right? Is this right spelling? Yes. Okay. I usually misspell this word, but I guess I got it. Okay. We've only got a minute or so. Does anybody have any last questions about crazy past perfect? Basically, the first use we looked at is basically that's it. I mean, that's really the use. Only when we have stative or non-continuous verbs do we use it in place of, as a substitute for past continuous. That's basically it. The other weird rules have to do with that continuous form. So for most normal English, this is really the only rule, really. This is it. Any last questions about this? No? Okay. Quick reminder, if you're going to memorize something, you do memorize these crazy exception words. Okay, where are they? Where did they go? This is something worth memorizing. These words that can be used in a perfect or continuous form. Very confusing. You will run across these in your English studies several times. Live, work, teach, study. Live, work, teach, study. Try to memorize those. Because it will lead to much confusion if you don't. You've got to realize these are the exception words that can show duration even when they're not ing form. Okay. I guess that's it. Thank you very much, gentlemen. You guys have a great day.
Thank you,
Take care,
Oakley.
teacher.
Thank you. Thank you so
See
much,
you next
Oakley.
time.
Bye. Thank
See
you
you
very
next
much.
time.